Good morning. I really appreciate the fact that you're joining Sunday School today. We will be taking a look at session 12 from the quarterly or chapter 9 in Ecclesiastes if you use your Bible to follow along. Psalms 90 verse 10 reads, "Our lives last 70 years, or if we are strong, 80 years. Even the best of them are struggle and sorrow indeed. They pass quickly and we fly away." And I don't know about you, but the older I get, the faster time seems to fly away. In today's lesson, Solomon gives advice of our best approach to live the time that we have left on this earth, or as he referred to it, the time under the sun. The truth is that none of us know the number of days that we have on this earth, but we are responsible for how we live those days and how we use the resources we have been given. All of Ecclesiastes is like a journal of Solomon's autobiography of his life experiences and his exploration of this life under the sun. The topics he addressed are sometimes very deep, or it seemed to me they were very philosophical, kind of deep in their approach. But for some people, they might be a little bit disturbing. Solomon made it clear that difficulties will come in each person's life, regardless of whether that person is righteous or wicked. Trials are no respecters of persons, and that may seem a little simplistic to us, but you have to remember, according to the theology of Solomon's day, culture maintained the concept that righteous people would be blessed and wicked people would be punished. And that's why Job's friends and family had such a hard time believing that he continually lived his life as one of integrity. They believed that he had sinned and that he had sinned very badly for God to punish him so severely. In his writing, Solomon made it very clear that sometimes the wicked have relatively blessed lives, and sometimes the righteous people suffer in ways that boggle the human understanding. One item of certainty is that we all will face death, and because no human can know the exact time, then we should view life as an opportunity to enjoy the gifts of God and to live in a way that makes the best use of our time. So our first scriptures today are from chapter 9, and it will be verses 1 through 3. "For all this I considered in my heart, even to declare all this, that the righteous and the wise and their works are in the hand of God. No man knoweth either love or hatred by all that is before them. All things come alike to all. There is one event to the righteous and to the wicked, to the good and to the clean, and to the unclean, to him that sacrificeth and to him that sacrificeth not. As is the good, so is the sinner, and he that sweareth, as he that feareth an oath. This is an evil among all things that are done under the sun, that there is one event unto all. Yea, also the heart of the sons of men is full of evil, and madness is in their heart while they live. And after that, they go to the dead." We're reminded again that the righteous and the unrighteous have the same fate, which is death. In their culture, and for many of us today too, if a message is of great importance, we repeat it, sometimes several times, so that the idea of imminent death will be addressed multiple times during this lesson. Each of us is closer to death today than we were yesterday. When I turned 50, not just a few years ago, but decades ago, I realized that I had lived over half of my life, and I said so to Reuben. And he questioned that. He said, "Mom, why would you make such a statement?" And my thinking, I thought, was pretty factual, that I would not live to be 100. More than likely, I would not. And so after 50, I was on a downward slope of my life. And maybe at that time, I had an epiphany. but my idea certainly coincides with Solomon encouraging his readers to use their remaining time wisely before it was too late. When Solomon stated that he took all this thinking to heart, it was because the ancient Israelites considered the heart to be not only the place for emotions, but also the place where decisions were made. And that was a reasonable assumption, since when we make crucial decisions, most of the time our heart rate increases and our blood pressure probably rises too. They may not have known too much about blood pressure, but we do. And they could have felt the sensations in their chest that pointed to their heart. But the point was that the advice he was giving was not something that was only a fleeting thought or an idea. He had pondered it, studied it, and experienced deeply enough to adequately advise others. He reminded his readers that God has absolute sovereignty over all things, including the outcomes of each and every life: the righteous, the wicked, the clean, the unclean, those who take sacrifices to the temple and those who don't take the sacrifices. For us, that might be more like those who attend church and those who don't attend church, or those who give back to God the portion he requires, or those that don't, those who make vows to God and those who don't make vows to God, people who do not know God, or even people who just have no connection with any church or church family, may not even realize that God is in control of their lives, just like he's in control of the believers' lives. He is in control of the lives of people in jails, in countries where there is violence and unrest, in places where riches abound. None of us under the sun are out of his reach. He knows the big picture of what we cannot and we do not know. We can look at situations in the world or in our community and be overcome with a multitude of emotions. But the truth is, as Solomon says, we don't know what tomorrow holds for us. Should we expect love or hate? Not the emotions of love or hate, but it was synonymous with blessings or tragedies. We don't know what's in store for us tomorrow. And while Solomon did not know what we should expect in our future on this earth, neither do we. He did know that death was a certainty that could not be avoided. Therefore, we must all prepare. And Solomon asserted that in the light of that, we should realize the preciousness of life. As long as there is life, there is hope for finding purpose and reward. And our next scriptures would be verses 4-8. For to him that is joined to all the living, there is hope, for a living dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything, neither have they any more a reward, for the memory of them is forgotten. Also, their love and their hatred and their envy is now perished, neither have they any more a portion forever in anything that is done under the sun. Go thy way, eat thy bread with joy, and drink thy wine with a merry heart, for God now accepteth thy works. Let thy garments be always white, and let thy head lack no ointment. A dog was not considered to be man's best friend, but it was an unclean scavenger that traveled in dangerous packs. We would compare it to our day and time, maybe with a rat or vultures. And the dogs were associated with contempt, but a live dog could still function and could possibly be trained to be helpful. A very wicked person, as long as they're alive, could make a change in their heart. In contrast to the dog, a lion was admired as the king of the animal world. And although they could be very dangerous, they represented royalty. But in death, they could do nothing good or bad, and they became food for the scavengers. So the point that Solomon meant was, it's better to be despised and still alive than to lose your regal status and the ability to do anything because of death. As long as someone is alive, there is hope. For Solomon and the people of his time, death simply meant a person was no longer animated. They didn't breathe, they didn't move, they didn't speak, they didn't see. Their conception of death was only a physical part because they did not have all of the revelations that we have that were recorded in the New Testament. In John chapter 14, verses 1 through 3 in the New Testament, the Bible says, "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I'm going there to prepare a place for you?" And in Philippians chapter 1, verse 21, Paul wrote, "For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." And in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verses 1 through 5, paraphrased just a little bit, says, "For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed," meaning our bodies, "if it's destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. For while we are in the tent, we groan and we're burdened because we wish to be clothed with our heavenly dwelling." Now, the one who has fashioned us for this very purpose is God, who has given us the Spirit as a deposit, guaranteeing what is to come. A believer's mortal body will be replaced by an eternal spiritual body that will live eternally in the presence of the Lord. We realize that while we still live, we face opportunities to serve Christ. So we should take care of our physical bodies to better render that service. Life is brief, and we should enjoy the time that we have and serve Christ in all we do. And we need to do that to the best of our abilities. To Solomon, once a person has died, there's just no place or portion for them on this earth. And that was the end, and they were forgotten. But because we now have a more fully developed understanding of the rewards awaiting those who live in righteousness with Christ, we should be reminded that how we live before we die matters to God. Solomon directed God's people to enjoy life, making the most of God's provisions, but also to work hard while living, since the things of earth can only be enjoyed while we're living. There were specific items that he mentioned that were to be enjoyed. Bread was a staple part of the ancient Israelite diet, and Solomon's admonition was to eat with joy and gladness. Whether it was bread or whatever you eat it with joy and gladness. Make a conscious effort to appreciate the food that God has provided. Now, the climate and the farming land of Israel and the preservation methods that they had made wine an important beverage. Their wine was made from grapes, pomegranates, dates, or figs that was less than 10% alcohol, sort of like the NyQuil that we take for our colds. And the Bible, we know, condemns drunkenness and warns against the abuse of wine and other alcoholic beverages, but Solomon was urging people to gratefully enjoy God's provision for their physical needs. Breaking bread and sharing drink, for them it was wine. For whatever we might use, it may be in some cultures tea, it might be a soft drink, or we might just say we're grabbing a cup of coffee with a friend. But those were ways that we could enjoy fellowship. So Solomon continued to build on the idea of enjoying life when he wrote, "Let thy garments be always white, and let thy head lack no ointment." In ancient times, when people were extremely sad, they wore sackcloth and they put ashes on their skin to demonstrate their level of grief. Wearing clothes that were made of white indicated a purity or a festivity. Like we might wear very colorful clothes when we're happy, and we might choose some dark, dreary clothes when we're not feeling, when we feel a little sad. And the oil on one's head, also in their culture, protected and nourished the skin, so that the scent of oil on a person's body would symbolize joy. Unrelenting joy, even in the midst of trying times, is impossible apart from a right relationship with God. And when we enjoy and appreciate the blessings that God gives to us, it's a time for celebration and rejoicing. When we focus on what God has provided, what He does provide, rather than looking around and putting our attention on what we don't have, well, then we find a reason to rejoice and to thank God. Our last scriptures for today would be verses 9, 9, and 10 that says, live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of the life of thy vanity, which he hath given thee under the sun, all the days of thy vanity. For that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labor which thou takest under the sun. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. For there is no work, nor device, nor knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave, whither thou goest. In ancient societies, as well as today, marriage was the rule instead of the exception. Family life was and is a vital element in God's purpose for life in this world. We are social creatures, and if you don't believe it, just check out all the social media platforms online. If we can't get together in person, we'll find a virtual way to do it. Now, Solomon, yes, had strayed by taking many wives, and as I said before, all his writings were based on his personal experiences. He wanted to inspire husbands and wives to allow their partnership to grow stronger and more delightful as time progressed. We may face hard challenges, but a devoted, godly spouse can make even struggling times a thing of joy in this life. Solomon wanted to urge God's people not to miss an opportunity to enjoy being alive. Your food, your drink, your necessary provisions, and the joy to be found in family relationships. He also encouraged his readers to recognize and enjoy the value of work. Whatever your hands find to do was the phrase that was used. Give wholehearted effort in everything you undertake, in your occupation, in your assumed roles in family and in worship, and also in your daily life. Give the very best in whatever God allows us to do. When we meet with death, there's no more opportunity this life affords. God gives us good gifts to show us his favor, but because those gifts come and go, they're only tools that make us aware of his goodness and should encourage us to live in ways that are pleasing to him, not to live for what was created, but for the Creator. In verse 11 was not included in today's session, but there Solomon says that he noticed something else. Time and chance or happenings happen to all. So he encouraged his readers to put their faith in something that is not under the sun. What is under the sun is only a temporary situation. Unforeseen things happen that can change we can lay out the best plans in the world, but something can come up and interrupt those plans. And sounds very well. It sounds pretty familiar to a lot of people in their lives. We plan things, and we can't control outward circumstances. But there's another writing in the New Testament that is in James chapter 4, verses 13 through 14, that says, now listen, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to this or that city, spend a year there, carry on business, and make money. Why? You do not even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while and then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, we will live and do this or that. If we don't know when we will die, then we surely should live now while we can. If we have a chance to do something for the glory of God, then do it. We don't know what the future holds. Believers are to enjoy life instead of worrying their way through it. Worry is like interest that you would pay. When you take out a loan, you've got to pay that back plus the interest. Well, worry is like interest that you pay on a loan that you never took. Life is too short to allow vain pursuits or grudges or arguments or frustrations or anger or any other thing to distract us from our ultimate eternal goal. Life is meant to be more than an exercise in mere endurance. We're not supposed to get up every morning dragging and say, oh, well, if I could just drag through this day, or you start your day wishing for the end of the day already. Now I'm going to read 3 quotes that relate to this particular part of Ecclesiastes, and I want you to listen very carefully to see if one of them resonates with you. The first one is from Max Lucado. You may have read some of his writings, and it says, if today were your last day of life, how would you spend it? Would you do what you're doing now? And the second one is from George Whitfield. Take care of your life, and the Lord will take care of your death. And then the third one is from Edward Judson. I am not tired of my work, neither am I tired of the world. Yet when Christ calls me home, I shall go with the gladness of a boy bounding away from his school. Along with praying for our world and our nation and our community and our schools and our church family for the lifting and the protection from COVID, we may also want to ask God to lead us to enjoy the blessings of life by knowing that we have a future with Christ. And pray that God will help us to honor him in all that we do and guide us to live gratefully throughout all the days that we are given, so that we can put a smile on God's face. I want to thank you for joining in today. We have one more Sunday in August and one more lesson from Ecclesiastes, and that will also be the last one in our current quarterly. So I hope you'll start looking now for a new one that you can pick up and read and study the lessons on your own. I hope you'll be able to join in again next time. Please, 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 please do what you need to in order to keep yourself and others safe. Thank you for joining.